Welcome back to another edition of Gary's Record Collection, another venture into radio broadcast concerts. They were put out on LP. They were sent to radio stations. It was a cheap way to do it. They, at the time in the 70s and then into the 80s, they really didn't have satellite distribution, or they couldn't really press CDs or send anything digitally like that. They had to do it on album. And there were a lot of radio shows like that. I mean, the Casey Kasem's American Top 40 was put out on records. It was sent to radio stations across the country, records or reel-to-reel tape. So that was the only way to get these concerts or live radio shows to stations. And one of the concert series that I used to listen to was the Westwood One Superstar Concert Series. It was on Sunday nights. It was like every other week or so. I think they did an every other week thing, and then altered it with something called In Concert, which was a shorter 60-minute concert, I think. But I loved it. And, when I heard my favorite artist was going to be on, I was there with a cassette. I was trying to record it. Hopefully the FM reception was good. It was a little tough for me. I lived out just on the outskirts of a relatively, big city at the time. And the radio station that they had it on was only 5,000 watts or something like that. It was not really a powerful station at all. So you hoped for the best. Sometimes you got really good, and sometimes it was kind of okay. But when this came out, it was like, oh, this is great. And I was fortunate to pick it up on LP from a record store a couple of years ago, or a couple of years after that. This is Westwood One Superstar Concert Series featuring Van Halen. And this is the 1986 Van Halen, so Van Hagar. But, I mean, it was a huge album. That was the 5150 tour, and it was the first one with Sammy Hagar out, and there was huge buzz on that tour. It was the first album out after David Lee Roth had either quit or was fired, depending on your story. And this was a big thing. It was a more pop sound, more accessible to the more traditional radio stations. So this is also the concert. This is from New Haven, 1986. This was actually, it was August 27th, 28th, 27th, 27th. And this was out, you can see it right, they wrote it there, the week of October 28th. So this was 2 months old at the time. So here's one of the records. And it has your generic label on it. Has the Superstar, let's see if we can get that here, look like that, get the label up front. Superstar Concert Series has the logo on it, has the SS 87-24, that'll be the 1987, and then episode 24 of that year. Does not have the band or any of the songs listed on it. It's just a very generic label. And that was that was something where they could publish those, and they didn't have to really worry too much about all the detail. They could just mass produce these things. Like I say, so this is New Haven 86. This is the same one where we got the live without a net video that came out. It was on VHS, and then after a while it was they put it on DVD as well. I also got a bootleg CD of it later in the early 90s, the concert series, taken from the radio broadcast, although this is only about 60 minutes long. The radio broadcast was filled an hour and a half slot, and so there's about 75 minutes of music on there. And there's a couple of interesting things on this, and we're going to go through. So the first thing is it's a radio show, right? So it's a fully produced. It's going to have your announcer. You're going to have commercials in it. And in this case, there's going to be national commercials that are embedded. They're actually on the record. And then your local radio station would play the local commercials once that side of an album was done. So it's a 3-album set, about 15 minutes each side, give or take. So you would have that. You'd have your national commercials, and then the locals. The DJ would then flip the side. Or actually, it's not even set like that. It's side 1 is backed with side 4. So the DJ would have 2 turntables. So you would have side 1 on one turntable, And what was labeled side 2 would be on the other turntable, ready to go. So if in case you didn't have local commercials, you could just go from one to the other without having to, take the album, take the needle off, do it, flip it, put it back on, put the needle on, all while you're live on the air. So that's why they did it that way. All right, so side 1, and here it goes. It's a Superstar Concert Series, and this is what you hear right out of the gate.
Superstars in Concert from Westwood One. Tonight featuring an evening with Van Halen. The Superstars Rock Concert Series is brought to you by the Coca-Cola Company and your local Coca-Cola bottler. I'm Charlie Kendall. This time out, we're heading for New Haven, Connecticut for the stage at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium. In just a moment, we'll join Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and Sammy Hagar. Van Halen on the Superstar Rock Concert after this.
And then they would play their first batch of commercials there. So you had to sit through a commercial break before you could hear some of the songs. And this concert's a little bit interesting. If you are very familiar with the video, there's a few songs on this broadcast that are not in the video. So we're going to, we'll get to them in a minute. But the first thing that we heard out of the gate, There's Only One Way to Rock. Same as on the video. And so if you were in the audience at the New Haven Coliseum that night, this was actually the second song in the concert. The first song, which has not appeared anywhere, is You Really Got Me, which is the Kinks song from 1965. They started with that. And that was on their first, the first Van Halen album, if you remember. So it was There's Only One Way to Rock, and then Summer Nights. We have a commercial break. We skip sides. We go to 5150 and Panama, which is a little bit out of order. On the video, the bass solo is in between 5150 and Panama, as it is in the actual show, if you were in attendance that night. Then we have the Best of Both Worlds. Love Walks In. Those were back-to-back in the concert. Best of Both Worlds on this, on the video and on the album were edited because there was a part where they played a cover of Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love. And the only place that it's been on is the MTV Video Music Awards from 1986. They played that whole song, included the Robert Palmer thing. So if you're trying to stitch this together and make like the ultimate Van Halen 86 presentation, you've got to have the video, you've got to have the albums, and you've got to have the probably find it on YouTube from the VMAs, and you have to stitch that all together and then try and put it in running order. And even then, you probably won't have You Really Got Me, and there's a few other songs. They played Summertime Blues, which has not appeared anywhere. One of the songs that's only on this album, we get in later into the broadcast, and it's Good Enough. And that Hello Baby at the beginning, of course, was the way that the 5150 album started. So like all of a sudden you put this album on and here's Sammy Hagar go, Hello Baby. And it was a little throwback to the Big Bopper, of course, in the late 50s. after Good Enough in concert, then they did another song that's on this album, on the radio broadcast, but not on the home video. Wild Thing by the Trogs. And the funny thing about Wild Thing, if you were in attendance at the in New Haven to see this show, Wild Thing was actually in the encore. It wasn't halfway through the show like it is on this radio broadcast. They did 2 encores. The first encore was Summertime Blues and then Wild Thing, and then they came back and they finished the show with Why Can't This Be Love, which is the huge hit off that album, and then Rock and Roll, the Led Zeppelin cover. So back to the radio broadcast, and this is where I want to stitch this together because we're to the guitar solo. Now, if you've been on YouTube, the guitar solo from this is all over the place, and there's a whole bunch of reaction videos, people watching it. So I love watching the reaction videos, but it makes me very familiar with the guitar solo, and there are differences in the radio broadcast and what was on on the radio broadcast and the home video. So here we go. This is a guitar solo from the radio broadcast. Okay, so now this is an edit. This is not on the home video in this little section here. And here we go. And then this is pretty much this whole first section of the solo is intact from what we have on the home video. I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. Now at this point on the home video, he goes into Cathedral, and then then he has that other piece with the hammering. But here, they cut it, and they go way to the end of the solo. So they cut out about 5 minutes of the solo. It almost has the Close Encounters of the Third Kind vibe going on here. And man, if you can imagine just being in attendance that night at the New Haven, it was like, it's like you had Good Enough, and then you get into that guitar solo. It was like 15 minutes or so. Then I Can't Drive 55, and then Ain't Talking About Love, and that finishes the main portion of the show. The crowd must have been just ramped up like crazy, because that is some good guitar playing right through there. And then, like I said, the encores, they had Summertime Blues, Wild Thing. Second encore was Why Can't This Be Love, and Rock and Roll. And this is great because you've got that home video and you've got the record. And I really, for the longest time, have wanted to stitch that together. And then back in the days of when all you had were cassettes, it was like, that was pretty much impossible unless you had like a really good pause button and you could play the stuff and hit pause just perfectly and then start it back up again. And if you made a mistake, you had to start all the way over. Now in these days of audio editing digitally and everything, it's you can make these mixes with no problem. You probably split it all up and get the separate instruments out and everything and beef it up and make a mix however you want it. So, but this is great. This is one of those things where like if you heard it on the radio, you better tape it because you're not going to hear it again. They just don't put that in regular rotation. And I love these concerts. It was a highlight of Sunday night. And sometimes there were competing concerts on the radio. It's like you had to pick. It's like, do I want to do the Superstar, the Westwood One on one channel, or do I want to do the King Biscuit Flower Hour on the other? And sometimes you had to make a choice, or find two radios or record one on a boombox and one on a good stereo. So, yeah, those were the first world problems we had back in the 80s recording these things. Now it's like, they're probably all up on the internet. You can download them about 13 seconds to your iPod or whatever and be on your way. So there you go. Anyway, that's it. The Superstar Concert Series of Van Halen at the New Haven Coliseum 1986. Hope you enjoyed it. We will see you next time on Gary's Record Collection.